So moving on, now we are at the 41st verse. It reads, when the practitioner achieves shamatha, higher knowledges are also attained, but without the practice of the perfection of wisdom, the obscurations will not be eliminated. Then as we already talked about the importance of cultivating shamatha in order to gain the higher forms of knowledge such as realizations, omniscience, and so forth. But without the practice of the perfection of wisdom, then the obscurations, afflictive obscurations, as well as cognitive obscurations will not be eliminated. Yes. So moving on, therefore, in order to abandon without exception all emotional and cognitive obscurations, constantly meditate on the practice of the perfection of wisdom with skillful means. So then, as we already talked about how without the practice of the perfection of wisdom, then obscurations will not be eliminated. Then, in order to remove or abandon all sorts of afflictive or emotional obscurations as well as cognitive obscurations, then we need to constantly put an effort to cultivate the practice of the perfection of wisdom with skillful means. Yes. Then 43rd, wisdom without skillful means and skillful means without wisdom are said to be form of a bondage. Therefore, do not relinquish either one. So as we already discussed, the importance of cultivating both wisdom and skillful means in the path to liberation. So it is said that wisdom alone cannot free you from the bondage of samsara, and skillful means alone cannot free you from the bondage of samsara. So if you want to be liberated from the bondage of samsara, then one has to cultivate both wisdom and skillful means. So then, to eliminate doubts concerning what is wisdom and what are skillful means, I shall clarify the correct distinction between skillful means and wisdom. So the other one says that he will go on to further clarify any kind of doubts between the distinction or between skillful means and wisdom. What is wisdom? What constitutes wisdom? What is skillful means? What constitutes skillful means? That's So with the exception of the perfection of wisdom, the accumulations of all virtuous actions, such as the perfections of generosity and so forth, are described as skillful means by the victorious ones. So other than the last perfection, which is the perfection of wisdom, the 5 other perfections, such as generosity, morality, joyful effort, and so forth, are all taught by the enlightened beings as skillful means. Yes. So now, whoever cultivates wisdom through the power of cultivating skillful means will swiftly attain enlightenment. So we will stop the teachings here, because in Tibetan we consider this to be an auspicious verse, wherein it says one will achieve enlightenment if one cultivates wisdom through the power of cultivating skillful means. And we will now pick questions from here on. The teaching itself ends here. So then, as we have covered another text already, Songs of Spiritual Experience, and now we have covered almost half of this next text, then I encourage all of you to kind of not forget about the text, keep this text with yourself, and constantly try to familiarize yourself with the text, and then refer your notes, and then take the time to contemplate on the teachings again and again in your daily lives, because if we just depend on the actual teachings themselves, and if we do not take the time to contemplate, then we will fail to inculcate these teachings into our lives. So in Tibetan we say that first you need to listen extensively and study extensively all the different teachings and scriptures. And then as you begin to contemplate on these teachings, then all the teachings should appear in your mind in that moment of contemplation. And then finally you should internalize all these teachings in your practice. Yes. Yes. So then in the 15 days that we had together, then you have really put in the effort to listen attentively to these teachings, braving the weather. Sometimes it was really hot, then there were rain, and then you braved illness too. Even if you're ill, you came to the sessions. So I really thank you all for kind of taking it upon yourselves to really come and attend these teachings. And now as we have come to the end of these teachings, then it's important to reflect on how fortunate we are to listen to the teachings, and then to dedicate the virtues that we have accumulated through attending these teachings to the ultimate aim of achieving complete and perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So then, as you now walk away from here, go away from here, then if you are able to practice these teachings in your lives, and if it bears positive effects or positive results in your life, then it is important to share these teachings with other people. Share these teachings with other people, because other people can be inspired, and other people can observe a change in their lives through these teachings, as you yourself did. Yes. So this is not to say that go into like a long discourse on the teachings themselves. Try to really see what was particularly effective for you from these teachings, and then try to share these things with people who are receptive to listen to you. Yes. So then I particularly appreciate the opportunity that we had together to share different perspectives, the kind of different idioms, the kind of different views of different traditions on different things. I think this is very important because even as a Buddhist, we cannot begin to say that our practice and our tradition is the best one. Such a statement comes from a place of prejudice, and as a Buddhist, we always are advised to use our discerning awareness, and if we want to use our discerning awareness, then we need to be free from our sense of bias and prejudice. So I think it's the need of this day and age to open up our perspective to different traditions, different backgrounds, and different religions. So I think this is something very important, and I really appreciate the opportunity we had to listen to each other and hear different views. So then, as we came together for these teachings, then I have done my best to give these teachings in the best manner possible. And then the reason why I encourage all of you to share your opinions and share your perspectives to the group and to be open to the group is because I really feel that we can learn from each other, and we can learn different perspectives. We can learn how to approach things better if we listen and open up ourselves to the way different people approaches different things. So even though the group itself is very small, but then it's a very diverse group. We all come from different countries, different experiences. So then we have an opportunity to learn about all these different traditions and different backgrounds. If we have to extend, if we want to learn about different backgrounds and different traditions, then if we are outside of such a gathering, then it's kind of difficult you have to visit places, you have to look for places. But through very fortunate turn of events, we have come together here, a very diverse group of people. So then I think that we all had the opportunity to learn from each other in this few days that we had together. Yes. So then, as we discussed the teachings of Thosamling, then in places wherein the language itself was kind of archaic, kind of not so accessible, then I've tried to explain the meaning of these verses by citing examples, relatable experiences, my own life stories, and relatable analogies and examples. So in the course of that, if I have caused any sort of unease or any sort of offense towards anyone's sensibilities, then I am very sorry. That was not my intention. And if in the course of our teachings, if you found things not particularly effective or particularly relatable to yourself, then forget about these things and you do not need to think about these things. But if you found some things particularly effective for yourself and particularly relatable to yourselves, then I advise you to focus on practicing these things. So So then I want to hear from you if these 15 days of teachings were beneficial and effective for you. Okay, then any questions? 진소 퍼진 쪽라로 탑 개발해야 되는 거지. 탑 이거는 진소 퍼진 쪽 지만 많이 배우니 퍼진 가르가르였어. 말에 진소 퍼진 쪽이 진소 퍼진 쪽 시험 많이 배디 신다가 안 가니 탑이 좋을지 그래라.
지만 많이 받는 시험.
말 시험 많이 배기 니 퍼진 나보다 니 가서 탑이 컨수스리다라.
제배 파시. 젠바 수준
So the 5 other perfections are the perfection of perfection of generosity, the perfection of morality, the perfection of patience or forbearance, the perfection of joyful effort or perseverance, and the perfection of concentration. These are the 5 perfections, apart from the perfection of wisdom. Questions? If you do not have any questions, then I'm going to start asking questions.
I have a question. Something I struggle with, honestly, like, about Buddhism since I kind of started. So verse 42. In order to abandon without exception all emotional and cognitive obscurations. How do we not fall into toxic positivity? And I'll explain what it is. If we don't know, it's in psychology, it's basically suppressing and ignoring the emotions that we have to kind of act like everything is fine. Right, so I'm a big believer in actually feeling all emotions, not dwelling into the emotions, but if we're sad or fearful or even angry, but I understand that anger is a more problematic feeling to have, or to, when we act with that. I mean, those emotions are here to tell us something, and I think it's really important to feel that and understand where they're coming from. And I do feel like in Buddhism, and I might be completely wrong, by the way. But I do feel like I heard it a lot that we should remove those emotions. And honestly, I feel like it's unhealthy. So where am I? Okay, thanks, dancing for me.
No, I'm taking notes.
Okay. No, because you've done it. No, something like that. You're not correct. So yes. So how do we deal with that, basically, in a healthy way?
Yes. 니 그런 디어들 그런 단다보다 나주라 니 모두중 나주라 니 도난치에 고조하니 각슈지라 나주기 다 나주기지 각슈로 가서게 되는 너가 저 디나마다 저 디바니 봉고라라 뉴딥다 니 시디 봉고라라 뉴딥도 되자마다 샘조기 차창마요라 되는 공로라는 샘조지가 아니 다 딜러드서 뭐 그런 게 남나 대상기 생각이 리번을 시나스라 아니 저기 사모 야리야제 땅 되나스라 상마 야보레 라데지라 야보 인샤샤 체데지 디에니 야보 말했어 가지나나 아니 가두이니 야보 체고레 야보 양양 체고라 아니 두영업은 일루라라 두영물은 야보 시라 메나양스라 야보 인 온도 체기지 상마 다가라나 니 차샤 되나스라 디기오 말스 디 풀라 뉴기리스 카이나나 니 세미나가 조와 동와 죄바 공조라서 바다면에 제나스라 디강가 만냄샤이라스 거기 라 냄샤나서 많이 야고요 말스 그런 게르는 삼실라 셴나스라 니 센서 동와 조와 죄바 가레네 마 철고야 돼 계신 버렸어 당분 인지미지 맞대는 거 말했어 이날 소소비 철고야 돼 계신 버렸어 아니 낭쪽이 시단을 지는데 데려외는 용문쟁이 센서로라 디강가 빵거리라 시기로 왔어 뒷방거리 시기도 전마다 뒷배 자원의 매화서 그래라 열었어 뒷자원의 매화서 고는 그 초래고로 용말았어 어디에는 디스카버로 소리도스
세상 어디 레니지 비셔로 오라 로야 이 배도 가다 로 두에 치 배도 가다 근데 로 두어 가서 공로를 찌되나 그렇게도 세들 배도 돼 제가 심하게 되니까 제가 이제 켈레니는 디바사이다 같이 제와는 변도 못 로디 하고 로디 문진 거 로디 체마진다네 로디 체와는 카르카르 라 디기 배도 하고 거니 아니 나도 레니지 비셔를 해드라 로야 같은 배도 가르카르 로 두어 치 가르카르 두어도 팬도 마토는 뮤지니는 아주 참셔라 뭐 하고 해야 되겠습니다 일로 가면 뭐 그러는지 콜라 비트고 기술 상체마다 한다는 거라 세상 저기 나다디야 세상에 다도 주고요 뭐라 근데 빼샤나 다도 주고 메바이나 다도 주고 데버 주고 메바이나 주비 주세지 무슨 그래서 주는 들으시 준다 그 주는 들으시는 거라 따비는 말이 되게 괜찮아요 하기 코나기 차로 어떤 거 비어봐하고 일단 데버 주는 들으시 주는 되게 되는 내용이 나서 된세대로 봐 제가 코체시다 그래서 콘도도 주대 위험을 내면 그 주세시 하고 보는 거를 열어 요즘은 되게 다른 내용이 다른 행동 일단이 아니 봐
So then this kind of reading into the Buddhist teachings I think is a little bit misinformed because we do not talk about suppressing emotions or we do not talk about suppressing emotions, we talk about abandoning these emotions. And now to come to a place wherein you want to abandon these emotions, first you need to use our discerning awareness, this intelligence. And if the discerning awareness has to come to a conclusion that it has to abandon these emotions, then first the discerning awareness has to feel these emotions. And when it feels these emotions, then it recognizes these emotions as such, regret, sadness, anger, and so forth. And then when it begins to analyze the effects of these emotions, then it comes to the conclusion that ultimately it does not serve any purpose. Ultimately, if we just keep thinking about these things, then we ourselves begin to suffer as a consequence of it. So this is the process in which you come to that conclusion. You do not immediately say that abandon or remove these emotions. The discerning awareness first has to feel these emotions, recognize these emotions, recognize its effect on our mind, recognize its effect on our behaviors, and then it begins to kind of weigh the pros and cons. And only then it comes to the conclusion whether one needs to abandon these emotions or not.
I'm not sure I understand what we mean by abandoning. I mean, I understand the word, but what does it even mean?
빵 남나니 가래라 비유레스.
빵만에 답변 오케이 내가 이미 빼셔 미니요 제가 미니를 내다는 집어지야 봐 직각이 미니라 미셔바지 미니를 넣지 봐 딱 가서 미순으로 제가 하길 넣지 미치지 그래서 넣지서 미니요라 나 찍들 상소 잡고 쉬어 그래서 춘주지더라 찍디 싫어도 가르라네 싫어 공부 말씀을 들려야 돼서 난 미셔바지 군일을 따오네 군일을 제가 가르 상소 잡고 공부 만들때 돈이 수천도 지니들라 그걸 가르려서나 내가 가르려고 그걸 밀어 줘봐야 알아서 이게 가서 어떻게 되게 다 춘주지가 아니 소소 출연하는 거 디바야서 다 찍들라 군인 내가 집어지냐는 심지기 돈을 싫어 가지고 어디 주요 말으로 상대에서 바로 나온데나 다 그걸 미셔바지 따리거나 아니 줘봐야 될 거면서 소소에 내서 보고 되게 와서요 소소가 출연다 던질라야 많이 아니야 최선을 내리게는 이거 싸면서 가끔 생각 잡고 이걸 주주지가 지더라 남서 보내지 않으면 하게 중요해요. 근데 집이 가는 마음 만들어. 그래서 그 패션은 지금 뭐 이 패션은 근데 순서는 이 컨디션. 제가 단대 지디게 단대 미일을 가면 제는데 지디게 빵이요. 남서 보내지. 지디 걸어서 같이 맞아 됐지라. 빵을 줘도 최고.
So then we can understand what do we mean by abandon these afflictive emotions. With this example, let's say there are two people, and then there's a third person, and this third person attacks both the people verbally. And one person has a very sensitive kind of reaction to the verbal attacks, and the other one doesn't really react so much. So what's the difference between these two people? One because he's so sensitive, he gives in to anger and begins to retaliate. The other one doesn't give in to anger in this moment. He thinks about it's just verbal, it's just words in the end. He doesn't really react to that situation. So in this too, what is the consequence of these two reactions? If in the first case the situation becomes worse, in the second case it's okay. The situation doesn't get blown up from here. So this is what we mean by abandoning the afflictions. You do not give in to these afflictive emotions in moments of adverse situations.
Alright, so it sounds like it doesn't mean to abandon the emotions, but not to react and blow it, you know? So the first person might have been offended.
This is in relation to ourselves.
Yeah.
First, we do not give in to this. Later on, as we learn not to react in these manner to these situations, anger itself gets diminished. Slowly, you begin to abandon the emotion of anger itself. That's the ultimate. So we have to relate this to ourselves. So abandon, in that strict term of the words, then it means if you completely abandon, then you become a Buddha yourself, right? But we are in the process of abandoning right now. We can understand it in this manner. So in Buddhism we talk about temporary abandonment and ultimate abandonment. So ultimately, like, you are free from all these emotions. But we work towards that by not giving in to these emotions. So the way in we can approach the process of abandoning these emotions is, like, for example, not actively seeking to engage the source of these angers, like avoiding them, putting yourself in some sort of a distance away from them. This is one method. The other one is, now if you are engaged in that source of anger or source of these emotions, then to think about the antidote of these emotions, such as forbearance, patience, compassion in this moment. And these can help us to abandon these afflictive emotions.
Sorry, can I ask another question?
Yes.
So let's say not anger. I understand about. Let's say sadness. How do we abandon sadness?
당한적이 동화라에 딩한적이 조와가 동화다죠. 딩한적이 녀모랑 하샤기라.
동화. 녀모라에 컬러나 라주 마시오지 제레지 있으니까 녀모는 자동 공수의 순서예요. 다른데 동화들이 마시오지가 동화 동해로 선도도 생각들이 근데 코로나라는 게 너무 그런 연문은 식당도 좀 많이 된다. 나중에 마시오지가 시와도 돌려되는 안직 그런 동의가 상콜로 동의 영어도 동의가 상관.
동의 영화에는 가리는 셈도 좋아지기도 하죠. 좋아진 맞아요. 셈소라.
나중에 마시오지다. 저거는 저거들이 준다더라. 레레도 마시오지 제레지 있으면 대신에 영어래.
다디 녀몽이 나스라 아니 간제스 뽕거를 했다 저기.
근데 좋아디.
좋아디.
딱 기발하다 이 좋아디 수수양 생상 지출 가르치는 거. 봐. 좋아디 빠빠만 가르치는 거. 해낼었다.
So similarly, the approach is the same. First, like I was asking Gishima, like if sadness really is looked at as an affliction in Buddhism, and then she says that the definition of an affliction is that which disturbs the natural calm or the peace of the mind. And then when we are sad, our peace of mind is disturbed. So then it follows that it is an affliction, even though we do not technically term it as such in the presentation of mental factors. But logic dictates that it is an affliction. So if it is an affliction, then yes, it's the same process. The discerning awareness has to feel this emotion first, and then when it feels, it recognizes it as such sadness. And then it begins to see how it manifests in our mind, how it affects us, how it affects our speech, acts. And then if it has a positive effect or a negative effect. And then you begin to see by constantly keeping the mind in a place of sadness, does it have a positive effect on ourselves or not? And when you come to a conclusion it's positive or not, then one can begin to abandon it or cultivate it. So the process is same. So if you are able to give me a particular example, then maybe I can help clarify it further.
So let's say I read about toxic positivity from someone. Her name is Susan David. Anyway, when she was, 14, her dad passed away, and her mom told her, "Oh, go to school, smile, put a smile on your face, and behave like everything is fine." So, and she was a child, right? And she didn't know how to deal with it, right? But she didn't show. She didn't grieve. She didn't allow herself to be sad. And obviously it came after many years, and now she talks about it and all of that. So, I think it's important to be sad when we need to be sad, but completely agree that we shouldn't dwell into the sadness and know how to take ourselves out of it. But in this case, for example, when something really horrible happens, and we lose people or whatever it is, I don't think it's honestly the healthy thing is to abandon that emotion.
So the more you deal with basic shanasra, the hinganzogi ni yabo indo chejera, ti yabo marayo lejera, sangma dikde sharo che ti yabo marayo lejera. Ni pena chashana the ricola tadrupe mi peni ki chimejera, morangi nyamshipki the chezom rojera, ti na morangi nyawado khartiyerla na mo lo chipshin is morangi abatong isra. Tiaba Tondesa Mani, Moranchi Amagita, Lobra the Toa de Chevra, and Chigan Chimeton, Gimosaza Jogorda, Lapres. The Rejoin is a man, more Abashibegi, Dumajura, Chasamachi Sortuyamara, Abashibegi, Jobaro, the Chasamachi Sortuyamaras. Chinju was a Madine, Gimots Zumtanda, Sama Didi, what was Namjitana Ansara, Chambocha, Lomambo, Jelasra, Samadilla Korimara, Tin the Zambani. Semda telemani mama ani kani che gozu yores chezani dahinga zo yeda pangwa la jira semzor yomonchen pangwa la de tadaran de himitus kaina nasra susu semgam yu chuden che dus ani kaduine susu chona chowa de sora che gores ani chowa de kilin che gores timajina jejene ya dilevha semji kani shukche goche
저도 저거 참셔라. 너무 김쇼던 게 배요. 선생님도 그 아바토는 이제 부디 다시는 미다는 코스면 저 김쇼를 이제 되고 그 선생님도 저대. 그래. 근데 저랑 간저기 좀 토래는 정말 토해요. 가리니 이니 마이다 정말 쉬어. 미토지네 비바와 지금 오늘 쉬고 계시는 그 미토지는 그냥 돈을 내고 되다. 근데 진짜 제대로 말하라. 오늘 지금 상담에 다양 무슨 시기다지 미제지나 좀 도들 카테로 있잖아. 수고 돈을 자탄 돈을 많이 돈을 무슨 내가 돌고 와. 정말 오늘 주간 나라 있어요. 거기 되게 디바레 많이 맞아요. 피가 셔버려. 이동 거를 많이 인도에 이거를 컨트롤 말이야. 다리 컨트롤은 무슨 장부를 하고 그 많이 내도 지금 그 잡을 뒤치고 뒤치고는 이제 뒤치죠. 뒤도 거야.
So then, even if she herself as a child had to put on that front that everything was all right, but she, in her heart, she would have been sad a little bit. It's just that she didn't have the opportunity to express this sadness or feel it fully, because there was an active act of denial there. So the Buddhist approach is never that. The Buddhist approach is to be always empirical, always accept reality as it is. So we wouldn't ever advise to kind of like act as if everything is okay. Never, that's not the approach. The Buddhist approach is always to take everything as it is, to accept what happened first, and only then walk towards what we can do to overcome the kind of consequent grief, the consequent whatever. So this is the Buddhist approach, and yes. So then, now we can. I will recount you an example. When some parents of some nuns passes away in the monastery, then we do not say that don't be sad. We do not do that, or we do not say like now don't waste your time doing this, crying over it. No, we offer them the consolation that they need to come together as a group, and let them be sad, cry, whatever. But then we advise them that all this crying would not help to bring your parents back. This is not the approach. Now we should do what we can to help the parents in the afterlife. So we say like it's better to dedicate our energies together to pray for your parents' consciousness in the next life. So in this way we try to process grief together in the Buddhist tradition. So if continuously grieving for that parent helps to bring them back, then we would all together keep grieving for their parents together, crying together. But that does not help. So we try to make prayers, make offerings. 인지마치 간이 다랑 그런데 빵다도 뭐 만냄 차이로 조금더. So this is very good. Now you are able to clear your confusion and the kind of reservation that you have about the Buddhist approach. And I think this is, from me, I think a lot of people have that problem. They equate abandoning and overcoming these afflictive emotions with suppressing these emotions, but this is not the case.
I would just add anecdote in the same direction, because it does happen in the Western Dharma centers quite often that they use not only positivity but also saying everything is empty and so on to prevent processing. I mean, this lack of education. So recently I heard as a case of a woman who said that she's been practicing Buddhism for 20 years, but now she has to ground herself. And she has to become grounded, which is very opposite to, if we deal with this, if we allow in Dharma centers opening questions like that, then we can come to conclusion and proper understanding and the fun. But if a place does not allow conversations and does not allow emotions, then you can space out, and then the person feels that one has to ground.
네 그란데스 디가나 트레이닝 직신이 되어서 네 지적이 먼저 최소도 되어라 디나라 데가 니 숙청 보여서 최다 바로도 냠네 첨부 첨부들이 거를 계제지 않자시 미기 남준의 심줄에 저기 샘소가 되어라 저거를 계제 간이도 저거를 계제시라 시기요 그래서 동반이 라베도 냠네 민스 부들이라 총마라베도 뭐시 직시에서 너로 최소 너로 최소를 주고 좀 전거라 지기지기 펜토에 최대 소소 냠는 제메즈 주름을 펜토고에 들어와서 디 sabla 동만이다 따로 장장 걸으시 냠는 친구들이 장장시 메즈 주름 넘어 샘소도 줄로 동네 한테 쳐버 뭐래 한테 쳐버려 디 시기요 말이스 제자니 페나 차샤나 지메지 로망버린가 나슈 장들이 최소 망버지를 데리스 된 따와치 뭐 토보들이 걸게 하는 게 제시 이리시도 맞다나 나슈 망버지 아니스 땅아 마티스 냠친주 제도 줄레스 스스로 마직 밥에 냠친주로 제도 줄레스 온다 믿으스 대대시엔도 좀 배트 나주 코노테교 세버로 봤어 나주 냠네 콘수 치워지 지기에는 라신이 미자보 냠충 수수메서 심통이 중으로 왔어 따로도 안 되는 친구들이 장난 시에는 남산 낮에다 보고로 숙치 볼이 있었어. Yes, so another, if I share an anecdote, I heard this from a Rinpoche, Shijin Ramjan Rinpoche, and he used to say that, he said that when we think about Buddhism, then the Western kind of tendency is to always reach at the fancy terms, emptiness, middle way, and all these like different esoteric practices, like Vajrayana and trauma, all that. So then this is a wrong approach, and he shared this anecdote that when he visited a particular Dharma center in the West, then he came into contact with a person who's been supposedly practicing and studying for so many years. Then he said, I have a big problem. And then he said, I have understood and realized what is emptiness. I've come to an understanding of what is emptiness and all these things. But I have one big problem. And then the Rinpoche asked him, what is your problem? And he said, even though I have come to an understanding of emptiness and all this, I have one big problem. The problem is that the Dharma center where I am, I do not get along with the people in the Dharma center. So then the Rinpoche advised him, rather than reading all this complex philosophical and esoteric ritual books, focus on like simple texts, such as the mind training texts, the 8 verses of training the mind, and then you can build your practice on that. So sometimes we forget, So I think this is the tendency from the West normally, when they hear like new terms, new things, they immediately want the highest things. Maybe that's not the approach. That's not the Buddhist approach. 방법으로는 동반이다 상목신 거들. 되네. 람자를 모신 아이들은 기르러 지서 지지죠. 그 당번에 말까니 첨부 유효를 들었어. 그 지제도 하다. 까니 지혜를 들어. 동반이다만 가다가서 못했어. 또 성공했어. 아니 되네 저 까니 지혜를 다. 되네 동반이 또 성다디서 상마라 버려도 딱 나가로 또 봐도 또 했어. 이나야만 까니 취수이든 나대서 취소되라 믿으님도 취는 참견 믿었어. 니시했다. 되네 라자는 것이 따져야 되는데 대토보다 배저 차보다는 뭐 담아댔어. 딜레라가 주랑 달로 좀 시제 맞으라. 드즈디스타도는 하고요. 맞자자다.
그래서 니만 저도 근데 나도 장문가 남자 얘는 저기 하이파 그 이도를 그치 가지고 어서 저기 얘 나이슈에 담보 말이야. 가만 맛이 애기죠. 담보 야기를 하셔야 돼. 가만 맛이 약 왔어요. 근데 소리를 거짓입니다. 자, 무슨 문제들이 더 숨는다.
So then, even when we were young students, we had the same tendency. We wanted to learn about the Tantra. As we hear like these different names of different practices in the Tantra, and then the higher esoteric rituals in the Sutra themselves, as we learn about these terminologies and these practices, then we used to ask our teachers about these when we were young. And the teachers always say that just build a good foundation first, rather than grabbing for these things. And don't ask questions about these things. He used to dismiss when we were young. So I think this is the reason why. So now we realize why our teachers dismiss our questions regarding all these things when we were young. It makes sense now when we are older, and as we have dedicated years to this practice, then it needs years of effort, years of training, years of practice to approach the higher forms of tantric practice and esoteric rituals. Questions? You had a question?
Yes, it's a little bit different from what we've been talking about. There was, there's this constant, mention of the form of feeling as being optimal for attaining enlightenment. At the same time, the Buddha talks about there being infinite number of forms and beings and realms. So out of this entire infinitude, it's the humans that are optimal, optimally kind of the conditions are perfect. I just wanted to confirm that, and then if that is so, humans have been around for just a flash in the pan. We've been here for a very short time in the entire scheme of life, and we're also on our way out, right? We're redefining what it means to be a human with the integration of technology. Will Buddha's teachings remain relevant when that happens?
Sorry. 근데 디와디들도 만족이다. 밀루린친데 취취가 고급 약속들이 숨겨라서 콜라니 카레나이 칼로르. 조로이나레 콜라다 디창말 창대를 숨겨라서 디주밀리티. 아니 먼저 디나스라 아니 먼저 나중나라니 지와 타이바요를 가게라서 조와 타이바요레니 감로가로가로 조와로가로가요레 나베로데 신로가로가로 조와로가로가요레 나게라서 딘조 타이바데조 강강이니 미 리디오라 미 리디라 지불라스라 대저에 최초의 고급 상보디오라 상쇼디 가르치자요라 나게라서 직디 빼망보요라서 대저 미지불라 가르치자 고급 상쇼디오라서 직 저니어데 데네 이나스라 미라베기 조 심진지로와서 디 zamlinalene shiraduyo maris ko michane ani ta tanda nazoge ni serida ni tuje yage do tanda mijuru mo shirani maris kaina na paso toshi na ya de la shukchumuda zamlin kora tondo yage binga wande bayoras tide ina ni namshugi tempa joras di jurle kaga negiresra namshugi tempa ne jansra ani mila ani gohu kaga chimores namshugi tempa di
저 미 야시를 미 겨와 마치 지금 같은 거 같아. 미 있는데 셴바기 제마도 이거 마 미사고. 쇼인장 나온다.
So when we say that the human form is the optimal form to pursue spirituality or to pursue the path to liberation, then it is a statement that does not say that if you are a human, then it is a given that you will be able to pursue the path to liberation. This is not a statement. What it means is that if you are born in the human form and if you dedicate your efforts towards the path to liberation, then this is the most optimal form. Just because you are a human doesn't mean that you are at an advantage to seek the path to liberation. Because we know that human beings sometimes are really like demons. When the human intelligence is misused, as we know, like we have created bombs which can end the world in a few seconds at this time. So this is what it means. If one dedicates the effort and the motivation towards the path of liberation, then it is the optimal form. This we need to remember. And now, why? Now, when we talk about the 6 realms of sentient beings, then there are the gods, the demigods, the human beings, the hungry ghosts, the animals, and the hell beings. So the lower realms, they cannot have an opportunity to think about the Dharma at all, because they are constantly suffering and they are not blessed with an intelligence to think about the Dharma, think for themselves for that matter. Now the 3 upper realms are human, demigods, and gods. Now the demigods are in a constant place of strife with the gods. They are always fighting, and they do not have an opportunity to think about the Dharma at all. They spend their whole lives in strife and conflict. And then the gods themselves, they do not face suffering throughout their lives. They only come to face with their suffering when their long lives come to an end. And so they are always like caught up in a sense of bliss in heaven, such that they do not suffer at all. So they do forget that they are bound to samsara, and they only realize that they are bound to samsara when they are about to die. So they are not really afforded the opportunity to think about the Dharma. Human beings, because they are constantly face to face with the manifestation of suffering in the form of aging, birth, death, have the opportunity to think about the true nature of samsara. That's why the human birth accords us the best opportunity to pursue the path to liberation. So then, so this is the statement, the context in which we can understand this statement, that if we dedicate ourselves, then the human birth affords us the best opportunity to pursue the path to liberation. But from my perspective, if we are not if a human being is not properly motivated, and if a human being is misinformed, then I think they are the most dangerous creatures in this planet. The kind of danger that we associate with, like tigers and animals and such animals, like the worst that they can do is like kill 5 people, 10 people at the most, and they do it out of a sense of fear. They do it out of a sense of like sustaining themselves. Whereas human beings, just for the sake of it, have created a bomb that can end like the whole world in a few seconds, like billions and millions of people in 1 second. So this is why, if the human intelligence is misinformed and misdirected, then human beings really are the most dangerous creatures on this planet.
He asked also about human beings exist for a short time. So are there any verses?
The me level the bomb that is so rose. The day yoging draw the nanita me like Jurmunig Marista. Simjin Lejura. And it did somebody. Then the other question was about how relatable would Buddhism be as would Buddhist teachings be, right? Sanji Tembala, the Kazaki Guru Shagrestra, Sangi Tembala, the Kazis Negris. Any Sangi Chugi Gokojera, Mila Goko, the Kazis Negris. So if the human race itself is at the risk of extinction, then like in the short time that the human race itself has, then how relatable would the Dharma be? Then I think there is a need for the Dharma teachings as the times get more deteriorated. I think people would find a need for the Dharma in those times. And the reason that the time begins to deteriorate is because we have such strong self-cherishing attitudes, such strong self-grasping. And this is the reason why like all these things happen in the world. And now whether the Dharma survives as a tradition or not, that's dependent upon people who formally practice the Dharma or not, and which is in essence the Sangha, the spiritual community itself. So it depends on whether the spiritual community is an authentic spiritual community, a genuine spiritual community or not. So then generally when we have this impression that when we look at different spiritual traditions and their spiritual practitioners, and we look at these spiritual practitioners as somewhat backward, a hang-up of the past. Sometimes we look at them like this. But this is a very wrong misconception, because a true spiritual practitioner would not ever think about actively or intentionally harming someone, intentionally harming future generations, or they would not do such things. So then the question arises: who is the true backward people? Even like business people from very like rich countries, and scientists who do not take into account the effects their inventions and so forth can have on the future. So from one aspect we need to think about these two.
chulu sheba jing bichi ki chewa ni chulu di mi ki ni ani tuba ja ani chido pen no chulu tabe na nga namba ye ko ni ki no chulu namba yo namba ya ma ni namba la ya ma ta kachi ne shu na kari bichi ki chira la tele di ki chue mi ki chue ko so so ti tu ga chulu na la du je chila ni ki ta je yo no.
So then it's also important to remember that one particular spiritual practitioner is not representative of a whole tradition, a whole religious tradition. And this is the mistake we make. We look at religion itself as something that we can do without, and something that is not necessary because we see the behaviors of certain practitioners only. And then we begin to equate that practitioner with the whole tradition itself. This is not the way we should think about religions. A particular one person cannot be representative of a whole people.
Human beings from other universes or other continents also qualify for precious human reward from one human.
Ninga zogi tanda Thosamling na yogi michi kuza mayin basra. Ni mi rik ta zamling shinda mambole yor la gera. Wote zo ni zogi tejo mili de la ni tsina di yoribes. Kunzo le tejo mili toyo ba tsina di yoribes. No palam chyo la yor. Ta di zena na yor.
mi da de
Ganzo kashi lamna ni marme do re la be ni shigda. Suk di ganzo namju ina shari ra ganzo ina kunzo ina marme la na mar do re la yor.
mar
Zena na ta di shingkar.
diga dia paham da ga ma ji shin do che shin ya so diga la anzu di shin dia mo shin
So I cannot really authoritatively say that this is so, because when we say that the southern earth, human beings, then this is earth, this is us. And our form is blood, bones, and flesh. Then now all this comes from the Abhidharma Kosha, and in the Abhidharma Kosha, then we talk about there being like similar human beings. Like human births in the north, west. So in the west, it's called Palangju, and indeed, now from what I understand, not Gishima, and they are humans, but the form is different. The form is not flesh and bones. Some say some are made out of butter. Now how verifiable this is, I cannot say. But yeah, Gishima says that she cannot conclusively say this is so.
I heard about it, this unpleasant sound, which is very, very blissful for a very, very long time. And because it's so blissful, again, the problem of gods arises, no interest much. But at the end, the sound of death similar here, because I'm not sure. I don't know. But there are no human beings.
Yes, okay, then we end our retreat with a dedication prayer together.
If we're coming back after.
디진의 자동의 수직 폐기로 왔어요.
첫 번째 아니면 이거
We click a photo and then end the retreat, maybe.
Like
자동
now?
빠르지 자가 소용하지가. Okay, let's do